Thanks, Thomas. For today's meeting, we're very pleased to welcome our own Emily Jean Leischner, who will discuss her collaborative project with Nuxalk First Nation Ancestral Governance Office and non-Indigenous scholars, which seeks to bring Indigenous laws into the settler archive. Working with staff at the American Philosophical Society, they are exploring whether a shared stewardship contract could be a feasible way to use Nuxalk laws to protect the Nuxalk language documented and preserved at the APS. Emily Jean Leischner is a settler, community-based researcher who studies and works with heritage institutions like museums and archives. In reciprocity with colleagues and friends from the Nuxalk First Nation, whose territory is on the northwest coast of what is also known as British Columbia, Canada, she researches the historical and contemporary appropriation of Nuxalk knowledge and heritage, collaborating on projects that reclaim and uphold Nuxalk sovereignty. She is currently the 2023-2025 NACI Career Pathways Postdoctoral Fellow here at the APS. And with that, I'll turn the floor over to Emily. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for such a nice introduction, Ruth. And thank you, everyone, for welcoming me here today. I can see that there's a lot of people that I know in the chat, so I'm really touched that so many people came. And I also see a lot of people that I don't know, so I'm very happy to meet you all over Zoom. If you'll just give me a quick minute while I pull my slides up, then I will go ahead and get started. All right, there we go. Looking good, everyone? Great. Yeah, so like Ruth said, my name is Emily. I'm speaking to you here today from Lenape-Hoking, the traditional, ancestral, and ongoing territory of the Lenape people, where I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the APS. And the primary project that I've been working on this year has been to try to think about ways to use Nuxalk laws with Nuxalk ancestral governance to protect the Nuxalk knowledge that is here at the APS. This is as maybe you heard from the introduction, this is a forum for works in progress, and this is the very first time that I am presenting on this work. So I'm really looking forward to your feedback and thoughts and kindness as I figure out what the best, how to kind of talk about this thing that we've been working on really quietly, but are really excited about. So the primary thing that I'm going to be sharing with you today is this ongoing process of creating a memo of understanding. A memo of understanding or a shared stewardship contract. It's a legal agreement that we're in the middle of drafting between the American Philosophical Society and the Nuxalk First Nation Ancestral Governance Office. It's kind of an experiment in trying to see how we can incorporate Nuxalk laws within a format that it will be recognized by a non-Indigenous, a settler-controlled archive like the APS. Indigenous laws, I should say, have long been used by tribal nations worldwide to protect their knowledge and stories, language and intellectual property, their land and belongings. And so in this talk, I'm just going to share a little bit about who our research team is, who I am, and who my other collaborators are with Nuxalk Ancestral Governance. I'll talk a little bit about how this project came to be, what our goals were, what our collaborative process has looked like, and then I'll kind of end with a couple highlights from the draft MOU that we've come up with, and think about some takeaways. I also want to extend a really special welcome to any Nuxalk people who are able to attend this talk. Yaos Madamps, it's really great to see you here. Stutsunits for coming. I hope that you will forgive my pronunciation of Nuxalk language, not being a Nuxalk language speaker. And I also hope that you will feel free to let any of your any other Nuxalkum know that if they'd like a copy of this talk, we're recording it in part so that I can share it with people who might not have been able to attend. So like I said, I first want to go ahead and introduce myself a little bit, as well as the research team working on this project. So there's four of us, in addition to APS staff, who have been trying to collaborate on what a memo of understanding that uses New Hulk law might look like. And there's pictures of us here. Clearly, we need to do a better job of all being in the same place at the same time and getting a picture together. But we have Sinhekila, Clyde Talio, Dununda Iris Saiwalis, Sunquakila, Jacob Gascoigne, and myself, Emily Jean Leischner. Nuxalk Ancestral Governance, for those of you who might not have heard of that office before, is an office that is within the Nuxalk Nation administration. Ancestral governance refers to the roles and responsibilities that uphold the Nuxalk Nation and that tie Nuxalk people to their territories. It is, in other words, the way of governing the Nuxalk Nation that is in the process of being brought back into contemporary life in the present day. And so this MOU kind of fits within Nuxalk Ancestral Governance mission. I first got connected to this office back in 2017 in the summer. We were first working on a database of Nuxalk treasures, Nuxalk objects that were located in museums sort of worldwide. And in many ways, we're still kind of working on that project. Instead of a database, we're now trying to think about what ways we can collaboratively protect Nuxalk heritage wherever it has ended up. So as a non-Indigenous person, as a non-Nuxalk person, I got involved with ancestral governance because I was really interested in studying histories of colonialism and the reasons why museums and archives have so many possessions that are from communities all across the world, and how to kind of get to a place where those communities from which that knowledge originated have that knowledge back and can really use it to bring material and positive change to the places that they live. And so I was introduced to Nuxalk Ancestral Governance by my former advisor, Jennifer Kramer, who's a or curator at the Museum of Anthropology in Vancouver in British Columbia, and has been working with the nation for over 2 decades now. I can talk a little bit more about myself and some of the other projects that I've been able to do with Nuxalk Ancestral Governance and other organizations within Nuxalk territory, but I won't be talking about that in this talk. If you'd like to hear more, you can ask me in the Q&A or shoot me an email afterwards. I also know that a lot of people maybe have not had the ability to go to Nuxalk territory and may not know exactly where it is. So I wanted to include this map just to kind of give you a sense for where we are, which is a little bit above the small line that says DC in Philadelphia, and where Nuxalk territory is and kind of what it looks like within what is today also known as British Columbia in Canada. And then I also really like to just show what Nuxalk territory looks like. It's one thing to take a look at a map, and it's another thing to be on the land and territory in person. Nuxalk people have never given up the rights to their land or territory or resources in treaty. Their land is unceded, and they have all been caretakers of this space for millennia, for generations. So after giving you a little bit of context about who our project team is and what Nuxalk territory is, I wanted to kind of introduce you to a couple of our goals in doing this project. Like I mentioned, Nuxalk Ancestral Governance is really interested in revitalizing and activating Nuxalk traditional ways of governing in whatever way they can. And a lot of that is done on the territory. And we were curious as a team, having worked with and learned a lot about museums and where Nuxalk treasures have been and knowledge has been held. We were really interested in thinking about how we can assert Nuxalk sovereignty, how we can use Nuxalk laws and protocols to protect any knowledge or treasures or materials that have been taken outside of the territory. And so that was kind of one of our main goals. And one of the reason that this is a problem is because for the Nuxalk Nation, like many Indigenous communities worldwide, their knowledge and heritage has been taken, distributed literally globally, thousands and thousands of miles, kilometers away from where Nuxalk territory is. And this map just kind of gives you a little bit of sense of the many different places that Nuxalk knowledge resides today. The star is Nuxalk territory, and each of those little pink dots are either a museum or archive in which we know that there is Nuxalk heritage there. This does not account for private collectors, and it almost certainly does not account for all of the museums, archives, and libraries that may hold this information. And each of those dots also, in some cases, like in the case of DC or in Philadelphia even, represent multiple institutions. So the issue is really vast. And so what we're hoping with this memo of understanding and trying to put one together with the APS and Nuxalk First Nation ancestral governance, part of the hope is that we'll be able to use this as kind of a proof of concept or a template that we can take and use with other museums and other archives to use Nuxalk laws to protect those objects wherever they might be. So having one is kind of like a starter for us, and then we'll see see where we go from there. We had a couple other goals with this project as well, which included building connections with archivists and museum staff to steward Nuxalk knowledge, who are stewarding Nuxalk knowledge and treasures. And of course, we also wanted to uphold Nuxalk sovereignty by using their laws and protocols to protect knowledge and treasures that are currently only protected under settler colonial regimes. So the APS seemed like a really great place to start this project, in part because the Center for Native American and Indigenous Research at the APS has already made several memos of understanding with other Native American and First Nations who have knowledge that the APS is stewarding. And those agreements look really different for each community, which makes a lot of sense. But because of that experience, we thought that the APS would be a really good place to start this. So I applied for a postdoctoral fellowship with the support of ancestral governance to try this project out. And we were really fortunate enough, I was really fortunate enough to have that be successful. And here I am a year and a half later, and happy to share kind of what we've done so far. I also wanted to talk a little bit about what our collaborative process has looked like for anyone who might be curious about what it takes to develop a memo of understanding. We were fortunate in that we had already had two organizations, the APS and Nuxalk Ancestral Governance, who were both interested and wanted to create this contract. And so moving forward over the past year and a half, we have held collaborative meetings online, and I've gone back to visit Nuxalk territory and work with folks a couple times as well. Our first step was to survey the Nuxalk knowledge that is at the APS to figure out what was there. We also took a look at some of the MOUs that the APS has already approved. And then we got to the drafting part, trying to put into language that would be recognizable in the format of like an MOU and also would be easy for us to understand, and included Nuxalk laws and protocols. So where we are right now, this project started in the fall of 2023 and it's spring 2025. We have a draft that has been reviewed with staff from CNAIR and Ancestral Governance, and everyone's happy with where it is right now. And so it's currently going through the review process with the APS, and we're hopeful that it will finish that process and be finalized in the coming months. I want to just stop for a quick second and just highlight part of this collaborative process, which is trying to identify what Nuxalk knowledge was at the APS. Something that was really important to all of us on the research team was we felt like we couldn't really understand what Nuxalk laws or protocols may apply if we didn't know what was here. And so for about 3 months, I surveyed and looked through the APS's collection. And staff at the APS, also at CNAIR as well, digitized all of that material, anything that hadn't been digitized, and shared it with us, with our research team, so that we could kind of understand what we were looking at. And so some of the things that are included in the APS's collection are Nuxalk language. We have vocabulary lists, for example. And we also have written documentation of Smayusta, which are Nuxalk oral traditions. And we also found the names of Nuxalk people and the names of Nuxalk places. This is just some of the information that we were able to confirm was here. We also learned that understanding what was present at the APS was a little bit more complicated than we thought, particularly when it came to the works of Franz Boas. This is a picture of one of Franz Boas's early field notes. There are about 100 pages or so that are that include Nuxalk language or reference Nuxalk people. But I don't know about you all, but I can't read this at all. And that's not just because the handwriting is terrible. It's also because Boas wrote in a particular form of 19th century German shorthand, his own personal way of recording notes when he was interviewing people, especially when he first visited the Northwest Coast in the 19th century. And so a lot of the Nuxalk knowledge that is recorded in his field notes was just really, truly illegible to us. So we were really grateful to be able to work with the APS and receive a Phillips grant to fund the translation of some of these field notes. We worked with a really wonderful and awesome scholar called Rainer Hatum, who is able to translate this material for us. So from this kind of illegibleness into a more clear translation of what Boas was actually writing. So in this example, you can kind of see that there are Nuxalk words that Boas has written. There's also, he's also written their translations in German, so we needed somebody who knew German to be able to translate that German into English. And right now, the research team and I are kind of in the process of reviewing all of this material and trying to make sure that the Nuxalk words that are recorded actually do line up with what Boas's translations are. Because we know, I'm fortunate enough to be working with people who know a lot more Nuxalk language than Franz Boas probably did. Most certainly. So this is just a little behind the scenes of some of the steps that we needed to take before we could even get to the process of making this memo of understanding. But once we got there, once we knew it was present at the APS, then we could kind of move to this next phase of drafting a contract to protect it. So in this next part of the talk, I just want to spend a little bit of time highlighting a couple things that we learned, things that we're proud of when it comes to the MOU that we drafted, and things that we found out were really important to include, since this was, as a research team, our kind of our first time attempting to create such a document. I'm hoping that sharing some of this information with you all might help with similar projects, or if anyone is interested in what an MOU might look like for nations that you work for or are working with. So the first part seems extremely simple, but was not something that I was anticipating when we first created a memo of understanding. But we learned from APS staff that contracts don't mean very much unless you know who the people are who are going to uphold them and be responsible for being points of contact. So In this case, we identified not necessarily the names of people, but the positions. So the person who's in the position will be responsible for will be the point of contact for this memo of understanding. So with Nuxalk Ancestral Governance Office, the point of contact will be either the Director of Culture and Language or the Indigenous Law Cultural Researcher. So we included two people in that case. And then at the APS, the point of contact will be the Curator of Indigenous Materials. So currently, the people in those positions at the Nuxalk Ancestral Governance are all members of our research team, and the Curator of Indigenous Materials is Brian Carpenter here at the APS. The second key thing that we realized that we needed to do within the Memo of Understanding was be really clear about what the definition of what we mean by Nuxalk knowledge, what the definition of Nuxalk knowledge is. Non-Nuxalk people and non-Indigenous people more broadly just may not be familiar with what is considered knowledge. So for example, like a Nuxalk language, that seems very clear. But we also wanted to be specific that Nuxalk knowledge also includes the names of Nuxalk people. It includes Smayusta oral traditions. It also includes any information that's provided by or originates from a Nuxalk person or Nuxalk people. So the reason that we were specific in that very last bullet point there is actually I can give an example. So there's a word list here at the American Philosophical Society, a list of Nuxalk words that was recorded by John Kirk Townsend, who never actually visited Nuxalk territory or, to my knowledge, spoke to a Nuxalk person. So how did he end up authoring a word list of Nuxalk language that ended up in the APS's collection? Townsend went on an expedition, a trip across North America, and the farthest west that he went was in what was then Oregon Territory. And while he was there, he met up with a surgeon, William Fraser Tolmie, who worked for the Hudson Bay Company and was stationed in the Central Coast, very close to Nuxalk territory, right before he was stationed in Oregon Territory, where he met Townsend. And so through Tolmie, Townsend then got lists of not just Nuxalk words, but other word lists from other First Nations and Native American nations in the area. And so even though Townsend didn't speak to a Nuxalk person, there was no way that he could have gotten that information originally from anyone who wasn't Nuxalk. So this is one of the reasons why we were a little bit specific about that language, to make sure that all Nuxalk knowledge is covered by this contract. We also wanted to be specific about the format that Nuxalk knowledge can come in. Most people, when you think about archives, you think about published or unpublished written manuscripts. But other things that are often in archives can be photographs, drawings, audio recordings, and you may also find art or material culture or treasures. And we wanted to be specific that Nuxalk treasures also contain Nuxalk knowledge. Even if it's not in a written format, it's still knowledge that is really valuable and should ultimately be protected by Nuxalk laws and protocols. So included in the MOU is a definition of Nuxalk knowledge that all parties have to agree on moving forward. And then the last two things I wanted to highlight were two things that we were kind of most excited about, which was including Nuxalk language and also including Nuxalk laws and protocols in a memo of understanding. And we weren't 100% sure like what the best way to do this was. So I'll kind of describe how we ended up, what we ended up on, which was a solution that worked for our team, at least for now. So we looked first to how Nuxalk protocols are being used today to inform non-Nuxalk visitors to the territory to protect the land. There is the Nuxalk Nation produced a visitor guide several years ago, which uses 4 protocols that you see here as kind of guidelines for how to take care of the land. So we have Klamta, Katsaya, Putalt, and Yayatui. And so these, I should be clear, are not necessarily direct translations of these Nuxalk words, but they are protocols that are based in Nuxalk laws and that have guided Nuxalk people for generations. And so we wondered, could we use these protocols to inform non-Nuxalk people how to care for Nuxalk knowledge as well? And that's kind of what we ended up trying with the MOU. And so in the next 4 slides, I'm just going to go through each of these 4 protocols and also share some direct quotes from the Memo of Understanding about how they fit into these protocols. And so here they are again, just much simpler for you. So the first protocol is about respect. And so in the MOU, we specify that the APS and the NAGO, the Nuxalk Ancestral Governance Office, will respect each other's expertise and will cooperate on stewarding the Nuxalk knowledge held at the APS. NAGO representatives will alert the APS if any part of these materials contain culturally sensitive knowledge and will work with the Senior Advisory Board to protect those materials. So these this respect for not only the land, we thought would be a good groundwork for outlining how we can respect each other, the partners in this MOU, and as we're moving forward, what that respect will look like. The next protocol is about asking permission. So when the APS receives requests to publish or distribute archival materials at the APS that contain Nuxalk knowledge from researchers who are unaffiliated with the Nuxalk Nation, it will inform the Nuxalk Ancestral Governance Office. The APS will consult with the NAGO on the proposed use to properly understand the nation's views, questions, or concerns. The requester may be put into contact with the NAGO on a case-by-case basis. So this section of the MOU is about responding to a concern that has come up many times since I've been working with the nation, which is that non-Nuxalk researchers often publish information or knowledge that is either incorrect or not appropriate to be shared in the spaces that they would like to be shared. And so as part of gaining more control over not only their intellectual property, but how it's used, how it's distributed, Nuxalk Ancestral Governance was really interested in partnering with the APS to come to an agreement on how they could learn more about who's accessing these materials and what are they using it for. So this was a section that we're pretty excited about. We're hopeful that it will not only give Nuxalk Ancestral Governance Office more information about who's doing research, what research they're doing, but it also might result in future collaborative works, which ultimately will produce, I think, better scholarship. Something that I imagine many of you listening are familiar with is that materials and archives are sometimes really challenging to work with, especially when the people who are recording it didn't have the context or knowledge about Nuxalk history, Nuxalk territory, or Nuxalk people that they might need to be able to interpret or understand what they're learning in the moment. And so this is a way that we hope the nation can gain a little bit more control and ability to like intercede and connect with these researchers who want to use this information. The next protocol that we used was for the Pudalt to think of future generations. So the APS will provide digital copies of archival materials for free, selected by the NAGO. Representatives of the NAGO will help the APS better understand and care for the Nuxalk knowledge held at APS by providing cultural context. So in this section, we wanted to think about who are the future generations of Nuxalk people, as well as future generations of researchers who might be using this material. And we're really glad to be working with the APS, which already, as part of its policy, is all ready to provide digital copies of archival materials for any Indigenous community for free. And putting this in writing in the MOU also just solidifies it and is something that we hope that we can use to advocate for this policy with other institutions, other museums and archives who might not have the same policies in place that the APS does. And then the last protocol that I'll highlight is connecting in a good way. So the APS and the NAGO will move forward with the goal of maintaining and growing a mutually beneficial, collaborative, and respectful relationship together. And so in caring for the territory, this protocol is used just to encourage visitors to relax, enjoy yourselves, be present, slow down, and be mindful and connect together. And this is what we kind of hope for the future of this relationship that we're starting between APS staff and Nuxalk Ancestral Governance Office and Nuxalk Nation. So finally, I just want to talk very quickly about just a couple takeaways and reflections that we've had while working on this project. We, or at least I, at the very least, think that this is a really interesting and compelling method for potentially bringing Indigenous laws into the settler archives. We're able to use Nuxalk language and to use Nuxalk protocols to organize and outline the MOU in ways that feel really unique. I also think that it's a potential way to uphold Indigenous sovereignty. These types of agreements, this type of memo of understanding takes a lot of time and takes a lot of collaboration and work together. And so it's not something that can be done easily, but the relationship building process that we're still in the middle of, I think, between the APS and Nuxalk Ancestral Governance Office is ultimately, I think, will be a positive one. And maintaining and keeping those relationships and connections, I think will be good, will be beneficial for everyone. At the same time, I also want to point out that this is kind of an imperfect solution. By a memo of understanding ultimately is we're putting Nuxalk laws into a format that can be like approved by a non-Indigenous archive. And so the format is like, it's a little clunky. I bet as you heard me reading, like the language of the MOU is more formal. It's quite different, I think, than I would imagine we would do if we just had Nuxalk laws purely on their own. And so it's a compromise. It also is not in some ways, it brings to mind to me critiques that many other scholars have made about the efficacy of using settler colonial laws to protect Indigenous rights, and that ultimately you are upholding the laws of the settler state. And so so there's many reasons why it's kind of an imperfect solution. It's also not necessarily a substitute for repatriation. By creating memos of understanding, just to be clear, Nuxalk Ancestral Governance is not in any way saying that repatriation is not something that they're interested in or that is a hope for the future. But it is, we're kind of been thinking about it in our research team as an interim step, as a way to assert Nuxalk sovereignty where we're at right now. And the state of the world right now is that Nuxalk treasures and knowledge are really disparate and they're controlled not by Nuxalk laws. And so this is one way that we're hoping that we can start to correct that for the future. So that's that's the whole thing. That's all I have to share with you today. I really appreciate your time and attention, and I'm really looking forward to any questions that anyone might have. I'll also just, before I shut up, we'll just say that I hope that if anyone has other questions or comments or things to share or ideas, please feel free to reach out to me. I included my personal email as well as my APS email here. Would be really happy to get in touch with folks. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Emily. Thomas, could you put Emily's email addresses in the chat so that people can easily grab those and contact her? So I'm sure there are questions. Emily, do you want me to moderate questions? Is that the best?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's see if anyone has a hand up or if anyone has put a question in the chat. You can do either. You can raise your little virtual hand and I'll call on you on it. You can unmute yourself and ask your question, or you can put a question in the chat. I can read it to Emily. I have a question to get us started.
Sure.
So I'm wondering about dissemination of this MOU. Like I'm wondering, is it going to be public? Is it going to be like made public to the New Hope Nation, like members of the nation, to the general public? How is like news of this going to be shared within the community, or has it already been shared? I'm just interested in that.
Yeah, that's a really great question. We have not, our research team has not kind of talked about whether or not the MOU is going to be public. The idea is that, we will use it as like a template moving forward to work with other institutions who hold New Hulk treasures and knowledge. I would love to, like I said, this is kind of the first time that I'm talking about it. I would love to share this more broadly, especially in New Hulk territory. When I didn't get a chance to talk about this in the talk itself, but part of the way that this project came out is that I had been working with New Hulk Radio, which is a community radio station in the territory, as well as New Hulk Ancestral Governance for my dissertation. We were trying to locate recordings of New Hulk people and return copies of them to New Hulk Radio to use for language revitalization. And a problem that we noticed in doing that was that copyright law, for example, was like a huge impediment for some institutions that we were working with. And it was just really obvious how unjust it was that these laws that these like settler colonial laws were governing who could access New Hulk voices, and were in some cases preventing New Hulk people from accessing their own recordings of their own relatives. And so a question that that I had at least coming out of that project was, okay, like what are ways that Indigenous law could be used to like circumvent or get around, or like in addition to like settler colonial laws? Like we can't, like most, like the APS it's in the United States. Like there's a limit to what you can do within like the bounds of the law of the country that's governing, and at the same time, we want to do better. And New Hulk laws have always been in existence and governing New Hulk territory and objects, and are still, I would say, like relevant to the New Hulk knowledge that's in the APS. The difference is that the APS doesn't know about it necessarily. And so I think I would love to, I think as a next step in the next time that I come back to New Hulk territory, hopefully later this year, I'd love to do a joint talk with New Hulk Ancestral Governance and present some of these ideas to the broader community, see what people think. What I'll also say is that and I don't know if Deanna is still here, but what I'll also say is that like there are New Hulk laws and protocols that can get very specific and that are tied to hereditary leaders and hereditary families. There are like smayusta that are owned by particular families and people and individuals, and the same with names. And so to fully incorporate New Hulk law into a contract like this would require a lot of work with and a lot of close collaboration and consultation with individual people in Nuxalk territory. So what we've done, given what is at the APS, which is largely does not include that, as far as we can tell with the BOAS stuff, does not really include a lot of that type of information. We've taken kind of a broader approach to applying Nuxalk laws and protocols, but yeah, that's a challenge that we might have to face in the future when looking at objects and possessions that we would have to work with individual families about what that might look like. I think that kind of answered your question and then answered some things that no one was asking, but thanks for starting us off, Ruth.
Thank you. Does anyone come up with a question since I last checked? I can't imagine there are not questions. Okay, Yumi has a question. Yumi, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, this is a great talk. Thanks so much. I'd love to hear more about the language revitalization work that you mentioned, and I'm curious if the materials held at APS have played into that at all.
Yeah, in progress is what I'll say. So the language revitalization is like of huge importance and interest in Nuxalk territory. Nuxalk Radio that I mentioned is a station that is working towards becoming an all Nuxalk language station. And so the MOUs, it was really important to us to include Nuxalk language in them, just in part because that's just the best way to communicate Nuxalk ideas and laws and protocols. But with the BOAS material, we're really interested in taking a look at the Nuxalk words, what the translation that Boaz provided is, and look at the stories that are transcribed and see if we can identify like who he was talking to. Boaz, like many, like many white male anthropologists, didn't really have a lot of wasn't careful about recording or respecting the work of the Nuxalk women that he worked with in Victoria, and so we don't necessarily know their exact names. So I'm hoping that will come out. But with the language revitalization, there are like a lot of really great Nuxalk language teachers who could speak much better to how this material will be helpful than I will. But there are the possibilities that there'll be Nuxalk words that aren't currently in use. There's the possibility that Nuxalk words that are in use might have slightly different meanings or might have different translations that could then lead to a better, broader understanding of like how to use that word contemporarily today. There's also a possibility that there will be like Nuxalk language, like place names that we can apply to the territory. The telling of Smayusta, of Nuxalk stories, is a really I'm sure it's an obvious thing to say perhaps, but like storytellers it's very personal. So the way that a story is told can give you better, just having a conversational translation of Nuxalk language can give you a much better idea of like how that language can be used in the present day. So some of those like translations of Smayusta, of oral traditions, are some of the ones that I'm kind of most excited about. It looks like so far Boaz has written his own like in English documentation of Nuxalk Smayusta that's been published in American and like proceedings in like the 1900s or whatever, and so those are available online, but the original way that they were written down before he edited them and wrote them up for a largely non-Nuxalk academic audience might be really different, and so we're really excited to see what the differences are and what they can teach Nuxalk speakers about the Nuxalk language. So yeah, I think I hope that kind of answers a little bit of your question, Yumi. But it's fun. It's really exciting.
Thanks, Yumi. Thanks, Emily. Any other questions? I had a question about how this, like whether you've looked at other MOUs at the APS between Indigenous communities and the APS, and to what extent this is similar or different. But it sounds like this would be different than another MOU with the Nuxalk Nation too. So I imagine it's like, yeah, I don't know if you have an answer for that. But
Yeah, that was really interesting. Each MOU that the APS has done with other Native American and First Nations was really different, which I think reflects that each of them had a very different, like, collaborative process. There was one, and I'm forgetting which it was, but there was one that like was really intentional about stating like, and like the reason that our knowledge is in the APS is because of colonialism, like just to like say it really directly. And there was a lot of like power in that, that I really yeah, that I really admired and thought was really, really interesting. And I would also say the MOUs are different in that like a memo of understanding is so vague intentionally, like the purpose of this memo of understanding with Nuxalk Ancestral Governance is different than an MOU that was made for like, say, a collaborative like digital online exhibit, which is not something that Nuxalk Ancestral Governance and APS are currently working on. And so the flexibility, I think, is partially why it was like an intriguing possibility. And the flexibility also means that it's, yeah, looking at other ones where it was like helpful, and also it's like, okay, well, not all of this really applies to us. And so like, how do we, like, thinking about like how like we learned from them and how we adopted them to our own situation was challenging. Yeah.
thank you. It looks like Lyra has their hand up.
Lyra.
Lyra.
Hi. Let me figure out how to put my hand down. Okay. Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for sharing your work. It's really, really impressive and important, and very, very thought-provoking. I had a couple of related questions, and obviously this is huge, so whatever aspect of this it makes sense to address that you feel comfortable with right now. One is about, if you talked a bit about how the APS has other MOUs. I'm curious about whether this is a model that other collecting institutions have, whether in the United States or elsewhere. And then the other question that I have is about money, right? Funding. Kinds of things happen. And as I understand it, you were able to do this as part of like a pre-existing postdoc structure, right? Where this was what you were able to come in wanting to do. Is that right? Well, anyways, if you could talk about like kind of how that works versus how it's being funded in other cases, maybe the other MOUs at APS, elsewhere, et cetera.
Yeah, both extremely good questions. Yeah, I mean, the money question I can answer first, which is, yes, so I applied to a postdoctoral fellowship here at the APS, that's 2 years long, which funds my salary, gives me a salary to live here in Philly and stay and like look at the archives. It also provides like travel, research funding, which was really essential for me to be able to go back to Nuxalk territory and actually like connect with people. Like I mentioned earlier, we have collaborative meetings on Zoom where we were working on this project throughout the year, but Zoom can only do so much. It really can. And although this project is, I think, important, it's also good to note that like there are a million other even more pressing things happening in Nuxalk territory that are more important than this MOU. They just are. From like people needing housing to in a fun way. Like there's a Nuxalk exhibit that just opened at the Museum of Anthropology called Nuxalk Strong, which is awesome. And so many community members have been working on to make it really shine. So that's, yeah, so I think like, I know that I first heard about these types of contracts happening maybe a couple of years ago when I was first starting my dissertation. I know that the Smithsonian has done some. I have been a part of like one other before with the Museum of Anthropology in Vancouver and the Nuxalk Nation, which was more of a project specific and honestly like quick. Like it was like we need to do this quickly. We need to like in order to move forward on this project that we want to do. So like there's circumstances in which MOUs are like, again, very flexible, can not necessarily like do kind of the same thing that we were hoping that this one could do. So I think like and I don't know necessarily of funding sources for like doing this. Like if I wanted to go, if our next step was like, well, let's do this with the American Museum of Natural History in New York, which has a bunch of Nuxalk treasures and Nuxalk knowledge. Like it would require going, figuring out exactly like what's there, getting to know staff and working with them. In many cases, it was really nice to work with the APS because I knew that they already had experience doing this sort of thing. That's not the case for every institution. And I don't, another reason the APS was really a good choice for us was because we knew there was also funding for Indigenous community members to come and visit. The APS has Indigenous Community Research Fund, which is accepting rolling applications. You can apply right now if anyone is interested. We have there's tons of really great like Indigenous community members coming to visit and work with the archives. And so because there was funding there as well, if Nuxalk people wanted to come and visit in person and speak with staff, that was another like real positive for us. So if I'm speaking to anyone who has decision-making power in institutions like museums and archives and wants to do something like this, like those are some of the things that really drew us to the APS as being kind of a good institution to collaborate with and to work with on this project. What it will look like in the future, question mark, I don't know. When I have a full-time job, I will tell you. Yeah, Lyra, did I answer all of your questions? Okay, thank you so much.
We have one more question from Adriana Link. Adriana, go ahead.
Thanks so much. I was going to ask a similar question to Lyra, but was holding off in case somebody else got to it first. But I kind of want to push it a little bit more.
Ooh, yeah.
So I'm really interested in the kind of layers of relationality that are at play with the presentation, kind of thinking about the role of MOUs as kind of an institutional framework and way of building capacity and things around those relationships. But what's sort of so clear and key here is you as an individual who had a pre-existing relationship with folks at Nuxalk Nation who, it's because you've already had that existing connection.
Yes.
Even possible in a lot of ways. And I know that you've been doing collaborative projects through other institutions too. So I guess it's more of kind of a question too to sort of reflect on how you sort of see those levels of relationality at play here. There's obviously a lot of potential in doing MOUs, but are there kind of challenges in working even within a single community and then across multiple institutions as one researcher who's kind of negotiating these questions too? So I know that's kind of a big question to end on, but would just love to hear that based on the work that you've been doing here and the work you've been doing elsewhere, sort of where you're sitting and thinking.
Oof, that's a great question. I mean, I guess I'll start just by like when I first conceived of this project, there was an idea that had been floating around kind of the like academic circles that I was in as a grad student, that an MOU could be a way to like maintain relationships between an institution and like an Indigenous community outside of like the need to like have an individual person. Like part of the problem that that interest was responding to was that like a curator, say, who has worked for 30 years with X, you know, Native American nation and like knows people, has built trust, has like done all that good stuff, retires. And then that like museum, like the people left are like, oh, well, we still want to continue to do this good work, but now none of us like know, we don't have that same like trust and relationship with this community. And so could an MOU, could like a document not replace that relationship building, but like be a method of maintaining it. And I've like kind of like soured on that possibility. Like I just don't think that I don't know that there's any replacement for like doing the work of relationship building. And so I think like one of the reasons that I've kind of been gravitating a little bit towards like using Indigenous law is that like you don't have to have a good like you don't have to know a Nuxalk person to follow Nuxalk laws. Like you don't. You have to know what they are and you have to know how they apply to the like your situation, but you don't have to have a good like, like you know, like that isn't necessary, like that kind of like long-term trust and relationship building isn't uh, necessary. And again, that's not to say that like relationships aren't important and aren't like valuable, but it's like, you know, especially being at the APS, it's a little unrealistic to imagine that like, you know, our curator of Indigenous materials, Brian Carpenter, is going to go to every single like First Nation and Native American nation that the APS stewards and like build close relationships. Like, would I love for us to have us to have a budget and a staff to be able to do that? And do I think that's like a better way of stewarding the materials here? Yes. However, like that's not the reality of the space that we're in. And so I've really been influenced a lot by the other members of our research team, the staff in Nuxalk Ancestral Governance, who have like really shown me, taught me not only like what Nuxalk laws and protocols are and how they apply to museums and archives, but also like have also shown me like the time and energy that it takes on behalf of community members to like do that education work, to educate non-Nuxalk people and then send them off. Like there's people have invested so much time and energy in me. And so I feel like the very least that I can do is like hop around as a little facilitator, maybe on my own dime in the future, who knows? But to try to do this and like yeah, so I think, I guess, like to come back to your question, Adriana, it's just like my feeling about them is very evolving. I think as we get to the stage, like this is a process, right? As we get to the stage where the MOU is hopefully like finalized and put into practice, I think we'll learn a lot more about like, you know, what happens when a researcher comes to the APS and wants to publish some Nuxalk language that they find. Like, what is that like negotiation? What is that going to look like? Like how does working together work? Like, are there actually going to be pinch point moments where we do need to have like we'll need to have like conversations between Nuxalk staff and APS staff? And I think there will and there are, but yeah, I think we'll learn more as we kind of like go along. Like MOUs, to my knowledge, are not super common in this area yet. Like I kind of understand them as sort of an emerging tool that's being used by Indigenous communities more and more. And so if anyone, you know, anyone else has experience of working with them or resources to share, I would love to be very grateful for it, because I think that I still have a lot to learn, even with this, as this process is going. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Adriana, for the question. So we're a few minutes past 4, so we should wrap up and let everyone move on to the final tasks of their Thursday, if you're like us on the East Coast of the United States. And just thank Emily again for a wonderful talk, and thank you all for attending and asking great questions.
Thank you, everyone.